you. Yes, that open access course that I think it's UNC Chapel Hill, that actually just happened, so I don't know if it's up yet. I'll have to check.
Put your up out of the way with your mouse.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
I don't know where you put it. Minimize it.
Should I minimize it? Okay. So, I got started with OER probably, I'm going to say 9 months ago. So I think that the reason that they wanted me to talk is that I think I'm in the same situation that a lot of you are in. Where do you start? And I'm going to tell you how I started, and maybe this will give you some ideas. So most of the information that I have up here, this is not something that I created. This is something that our people who have been working this with the OER for a long time created. Lori Cunningham back there was you coordinated the project, I guess, for putting up the wonderful LibGuide that we have that I think all of you will probably use. A lot of the information that you've heard already this morning is on that LibGuide, and it's a really good place to go. I tried to get the handouts and spread them around the room during the break. If you want to go to that LibGuide, it's the same address that's on the handout that I gave you, except for when you get to finding OER, you just put OER. And that's how you can get to the website with so many resources. So from that website, we have the where to start. And I guess this is, something that I learned, and I think most people feel this way. When it seems like there are a lot of places to go to get started and to search, but it's really the same thing that we've been doing all along. Very quickly, it starts to feel very comfortable. You already have the skills that you need to search these repositories, to decide which repositories to use. It's not as overwhelming as it can seem at the beginning. So one of the things that you ask yourself is just like the traditional reference interview. What does the instructor who is asking for this information, what do they really want? You're just going to do a reference interview. In this case, since it's for a class most of the time, you're going to be looking at the syllabus. You're going to be looking at the learning objectives, if you have those learning objectives. That is all going to determine where you're going to start. And once you have that, you start to think about, well, what types of resources? There are a lot of sorts of resources out there. What types of resources is the instructor looking for? Are they looking for just a textbook to adopt? That's the easiest scenario. Or are they starting to really understand the full potential of OER? And are they thinking, hey, I can create my own textbook. Give me lots of resources so that I can start to create my own textbook, perhaps my own online course. And so they start to ask for those sorts of things. And of course, accessibility comes into it with considering the formats. If they definitely are going to want to have a print copy of the textbook that they're looking for, well, only some of the resources have that option. So you want to think of all of these things before you decide where to start. So the first place I will always start now that we have this wonderful LibGuide up that has what great resources for every subject, but also tells us what textbooks have already been adopted in which department. So let's go there. So this is wonderful. You can search by subject within your organization, if your organization has something like this. And if your organization doesn't, maybe you want to look at a very similar organization. Maybe they have one if yours does not.
Sure. If any of you, I'm worried. You have to submit an OER tab here, and if you have it, please throw it in there. So, how do you think that? We would love to add it to our.
And did I say, you were kind of managing the project? Lorraine, of course, was and Christine Beard, provided the content for, and then, Carolyn's not here today. Carolyn Evans was the faculty advisor on that as well. We have an OER committee at CCAC, and everybody from the various departments, we're all trying to work together. So one page, let's, as an example, under STEM, under biology, let's say I have an instructor who says, hey, I really want to use an OER textbook in my classroom. And I can say, hey, guess what? There are other biology instructors at CCAC who are using anatomy and physiology OpenStax. Or maybe they're looking for microbiology. This is probably the best place to start. So let's say you don't find anything that way. Now you're going to go to the textbook repository. Got those there. This is from the LibGuide, the address that you have in your down. This is what they've come up with, and I'm just going to look kind of briefly at these first three. Because to learn how to search on all of these repositories, it takes a while. And you're going to go home, you're going to, work with it. You're going to find the ones that you're more comfortable with and which ones are best for which searches. But just so you get an idea, here's a big one. If you go to the Open Textbook Library, you can always browse by subject. Or let's say you're looking here. And you're going to get a lot of different textbooks. They're all textbooks, though, on biology. I'm not going to go too deeply into this. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview. What happens if we go to another big one, OpenSUNY? Again, you have the option of browsing by subject or just entering a keyword. What happened there? Did I spell biology wrong? Okay, and you get a couple of choices here. When you get into them, you'll see that they have different options. Some of them will have a print option. Okay. It's just, here's what you get. You might remember that 2 of the textbooks that were adopted for biology at CCAC were from OpenStax. OpenStax gives you a lot of choices. Free books, no catch. Okay. Have to search kind of by subject in this one, science. They don't have a ton of textbooks, but the textbooks that they have are very evolved. Okay.
They are created.
Go ahead.
Yep. Right. They're created the same way proprietary textbooks are created, except they use grant money. So they use subject matter experts to put the material in, and they have peer review just as you would with a proprietary textbook.
So as you're searching through the various repositories, you're going to find that a lot of people have taken a lot of these textbooks from OpenStax. You'll see, this is the same resource over and over again. Well, it's not exactly, they changed it, which is the point. But you'll see OpenStax a lot. And it's such a good place to start because order a print copy. All you do is click there. It'll take you to Amazon. The student can order their own copy. If the instructor puts this in their Blackboard, and for 20 bucks, just the cost of printing, they can get a print copy. So most of the things that instructors are looking for are in these OpenStax textbooks. OpenStax makes it pretty easy. So here's what I do. Here's my tip, and this is something that I have used again and again, both to train myself to search these various repositories, to have an idea of what's out there that the faculty might want to adopt. I developed a long list of textbooks in particular that I thought that the faculty might want to adopt in my university. I did it in my subject areas. I searched all of the repositories. I came up with this list, and I have used it over and over and over again as I've had discussions with faculty. Let's say you go to a meeting, a staff meeting, and upper level administrators are saying, OER, OER, everyone please use OER. So the faculty talk to you after the meeting and say, I really want to, how do I start? You already have an idea of what textbooks are available in their particular discipline because you've already done the research. You're already familiar with the repositories. You already know how to search them. So you can kind of hit the ground running when those questions start to come in if you have that list of OER that you have already searched. So you have something, you can speak, from a position of, having some idea of what's out there before you have these conversations. So I did, we were at CCAC, I'd say the beginning of last semester. Some of our instructors, what is OER? Some of them, really hadn't gotten started with this at all. They didn't know what it was. They heard their department heads and administrators talking about it a lot. So, sometimes the librarians were mentioned in the meeting, so they struck up a conversation with us. So I got comfortable at that point sending out an email to the department heads, my department heads saying, hey, if you're getting started with OER, I can help you. And since it's kind of overwhelming for them to go to a website and start searching the repositories themselves when they really don't even know what they're looking for, I gave them some links. Here are some links to some textbooks that are similar to the textbooks that you're using now. However you find that out, I looked on we have a website that will tell us what textbooks are being used. I used that. I looked at the syllabi a little bit, but mostly I went down to the course reserves and really studied the textbooks that are actually being used. And then you can look in the table of contents and see what they're selecting and they're already using for these classes. And then I would do the searching to find textbooks that are very similar to that. And so I put those out there, and most of the department heads were very welcoming. They sent that on to their faculty to start the conversation. At this point, I wouldn't do that now at CCAC because a lot of our departments have already formed committees. They have OER committees. So they were already well beyond that point. But if your institution is just getting started and you're at that place, that might not be a bad idea. Okay, so not everybody is just looking for a textbook. In my experience working with the instructors, once they find out about the world of OER, they get very excited. I can make my own textbook. It's going to be easy, and I can share it with everybody else. So more of the questions that I'm getting now have to do with they're asking for the components of either the textbook or an entire course. So, for instance, our developmental studies department said, can you get me, we want critical thinking, priorities and time management, and 7 other subjects that they want resources on. And what do they want? They wanted, if I can show you this. We want PowerPoints. We want things that can be used for the presentations. We want videos. We want activities and handbooks. So I just developed a simple, very simple Excel spreadsheet with the subjects as the tabs, and in the columns here, all the things that they were looking for. Then I just put the links over there so they can quickly go through and pull this from this place and that from that place and start to develop their own OER. How did I do this? Go back here. Again, this is a great list of repositories here. And I kind of took one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. There is a little bit of overlap. OER Commons is a place that a lot of people like to start. One of the reasons that people like to start there is It's easy to limit by education level. A lot of these repositories have things for elementary school, high school, and you want to limit it to what you are looking for. What is my search box here? Right there. That's not how I see it. It's looking very weird today. But you see here that you can limit by all of these education levels. And I would, of course, choose this one most of the time, being at CCAC, that you might have different needs. You might be searching for upper division. My favorite, Lorraine talked about LibreText. I use it. This is kind of the world's most popular online textbook platform. But it's not just the full textbooks like in OpenStax. LibreText gives you the chapters that you can mix. And in fact, they make it easy to put them up and create your own textbooks right there on LibreText. So LibreText is pretty powerful. You do have to start, you have to decide what you're searching for, what general subject. So like critical thinking was one of the things that they were looking for. Can't type today. And I'm not looking for whole courses, I'm looking for things like this. Again, this is a chapter, and they can take this chapter and put it in their textbook if it suits their needs. And I would take that and put it on my spreadsheet. Figure out, one thing that I did find, a lot of them don't have the PowerPoint slides, but they'll have things like this. The websites will be very presentation friendly. So I noted that on my there. Downside of live. Sometimes it's slow. Okay, and then my other favorite is the Mason OER Meta Finder. This is a search engine, which means you see all the things on the right, those are repositories, and instead of searching all of these things independently, like for Low or BC Open Campus, you can search them all at once in the Meta Finder. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's bad. See what we get. It's going to give you so many results that it takes some time to process, and wait for it. They're going to give you more here in a minute. You have to be a little bit patient with the Meta Finder. Because it's slow, it might take a while. There we go. Additional results. Thank you. Yes, that one. And you're going to get a lot of different kinds of things. You might want to do some limiting when you're searching someplace like this. Some of these won't be as peer-reviewed. I mean, compare this to OpenStax. OpenStax, I mean, you know this is something that's a quality thing. Not everything that you're going to find in the Meta Finder. It's almost like searching the internet. Not all going to be quality. But you can certainly find some quality there. There you go. So, again, I've done that for various faculty and that are kind of, starting to work on their own projects. One that was a little bit challenging was I had an instructor who had, their textbook was going out of print. And it's Black Women in Leadership is the class. Okay, how am I going to find a textbook for Black Women in Leadership, right? I did go through all of the repositories looking, just to say you never know, looking for something. Let me show you what I came up with here. was searching, I might as well write down something she might need. I know I work with this particular instructor a lot. She has designed this course completely, by herself. She's the kind of person who might just want to create or write her own textbook down the road. So as I was searching and not finding through all of the repositories, I did make note of anything that she might want to use later on should she decide to create her own textbook, even though that's not what she asked me for. Again, from the context of the conversation, I know that and because there are really no textbooks for this, down the road that might be something that she might want to do. So every time I couldn't find, chapters that were on Black women in leadership, but I could find lots of chapters in leadership. I could find lots of chapters on Black women in the workplace and other minorities. So as I did that, I just made a list of it all for her. I also searched our catalog, what ebooks we might have in our catalog. Maybe she wants to use a chapter from some of the existing ebooks. Doesn't this look really familiar? I started out saying, this is just what you've always done. And it really is what we've always done. Just searching some different places. Put some articles in there, and of course some streaming videos. She uses a lot of videos in her course. So I gave her some additional videos that she could use. But she still didn't have that textbook, right? She still really wants a textbook. So I thought, well, how can we make this? Her main point is that she wants to make it free for her students. So I can't get an OER that's going to meet that criterion, but I can maybe give her an ebook. So I searched the book that she was using. I went to WorldCat. I compared it to lots of other books, and I found a couple of books that were pretty similar to what she had been using. And then I said, well, do we own those ebooks? We did not, but can I get those ebooks? And I searched our EBSCO and found, yes, in fact, I can buy those ebooks for $100 to $150. Those are things, it's an easy decision for me. These are things I should have in my collection anyway. I'm happy to purchase those ebooks with an unlimited concurrent user model so that all of her students can use these textbooks at once. So I said, hey, I found these, I could buy these, you could use these. Do you want me to put an interlibrary loan so you can look at the print copy of the book to decide which of these you might want to use? She was very, very happy. We're probably going to be purchasing those ebooks, and it's not OER, but it is something that, yes, it's affordable. So sometimes, thinking a little bit outside the box, not very far outside the box, but so. Then after I've done all of this, and I've had these conversations with the faculty, of course, what you want to do, you want to hold a workshop, why am I holding a workshop, right? But, once you get to this point, the people who are going to come to the workshop, if they have already created some OER of their own, hey, you can use them. Ours was Lorraine and I did a workshop at Allegheny, and we didn't get a lot of people coming, but the people who did come are almost ready to put their new textbook that they have created online. So it's definitely worthwhile. So let me ask any of you, has anybody done anything at their institution in terms of getting started that has really worked? Or is anybody thinking about something? Everybody like
I went to departments, spoke to 2 or 3 faculty at the time, rather than I wanted no offense to administration because we all know faculty don't like it.
right.
And that seemed to work for us. Now that searching, I've built something similar because that's what everyone always do. They have their own searching area, and I figured out that I was the only one actually using it, and none of the faculty were. Thanks. But when I sat down with them, 2 or 3 at a time, that's when we could look at it. That's when the conversation actually happened. That's maybe what I'm saying. A face-to-face conversation. Money,
Follow
not, because whenever you're meeting with them face to face, are you usually talking about like at that point, or is it more of a general overview of OER? Like, do you know about it already? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the introduction is talking about OER and what materials are available for you, what I can do for you to get started, how we can materials. Sort of the more or less what Jody's gone over, just with 2 or 3. Now that the beginning of the conversation stages where we are.
Yeah, we have tried too to get into the department. We have, sometimes those are big too at CCAC.
We have a center for teaching excellence that they have actually somebody started a teaching circle for OERs. So Sarah and I are interested in working with OERs, and we invited ourselves to the meeting. And they were really in an infancy stage as far as they just knew that they wanted to use them, but they didn't really know how. So Sarah and I did a presentation similar to the intro this presentation today, where we just talked about what they are, the licensing, and gave them sort of a tutorial on that sort of thing. And Sarah's in charge of positive. But she started talking about, how we can house these things for them, how we can help them search for them. So that's really how we're trying to get things off the ground, and more and more people use circles. And those are faculty who are really interested in professional development and really helping their teaching skills. Those are the type of faculty who join the teaching circle. So we found that to be somewhat successful.
I don't know if anyone else has found this, but I find that using OER is turning people off. They think it's some tiny little pigeonhole of stuff, and they'll go to Opencourseware, look and say, oh, there's nothing for my course, I'm not doing it. But I rewrote all of our our plans to now we just use the term affordable course materials, and our push is to make materials more affordable. And so if that includes OER materials, great. But if it doesn't, it's still better what we're doing. So like we have found, we got a lot of pushback. I actually had faculty like yelling at me because I'm not going to find a free book for my topic, and I'm not going to write a book. You're insulting me, thinking I have time to do all this. And I mean, it got off the rails. So we kind of step back and re-strategize, and we don't really say OER unless it kind of happens. Because it does sound lingo-y. Like it sounds like you're trying to like push some fad or some trend or something, and that gets people, I think, a little bit iffy about it. I don't know if anyone's had that experience. Yeah. Okay. So we call it ACM now, affordable course material. Yeah. And one of our strategies too is to try to move away from our Barnes and Noble, because if we can get away from them, then we can offer older editions, buying options off of Amazon and different cheaper textbook places where right now faculty aren't even allowed to say that. They'll get in trouble if they say that. Right? So if we could get them a $17 textbook instead of a $300 new edition textbook, that's still winning. Right? So even if it's not OER. Yeah.
Well, I just referred from to the faculty member that came in us that said, hey, but just I'm interested in the OERs. Some of my students, and so just by email, I looked at what Leslie said. I looked at the class, learning objectives, and syllabus. And then just went out, did a lot of searching and tried to match up the best possible. Sent links and things that try to really make simplified process. Links that we can look at. The
exact match, but he cited that for another class he taught. And just that report, just all through setting links. So I think the takeaway from me is that when you really send them something they can get excited about, take away that search process that they can be overwhelming and new, that can be a reward.
Great. All right. And that concludes this portion. To introduce Coral Sheldon Hess. Coral Sheldon Hess started their professional life as a wireless engineer and has spent most of the last decade working as a librarian, web developer, and technical teacher. In 2012, they were recognized as an American Library Association Emerging Leader. In 2017, they became a NASA Datanaut. They had advocated for and contributed to open source software, open data, and open access publishing throughout their career, and believe that OERs have the power to transform higher education. Currently, they work as a reference librarian at CCAC's Voice Campus and teach data analytics and computer information technology at North Campus. You can find your everybody. So I'm talking about GitHub, so of course I put my stuff in GitHub. I'll make sure the link goes out. I'll get it to our organizers here. So I kind of drag this up. Okay. So I come from kind of an open source software background, which has the same 4 to 6 R's, depending upon who you ask, that we have in OERs. I read a really good article suggesting that request updates ought to be the 6th R. Who's had this problem? Let me see if I can get it bigger. There we go. Where you've got these files that you're trying to email back and forth with a colleague to kind of, you've got updates, you know, you have like project final ... project final 2 ... right? In the software world, we have the same problem. Okay, this isn't going to work. Maximized, you can't read all the words. Okay, there we go. And we solved it, they solved it, and I benefited from it with a product called GitHub. It's built on a technology called Git. There are lots of alternatives to GitHub. GitHub just happens to be the most popular version control software. Version control is what we call solving that problem of final 2, final 8, ... whatever. There's a really nice, gentle introduction to version control written by Prop Hacker. Does anyone read Prop Hacker? They were really good. I don't even know if they're still publishing new content, but their old content is still up and really good. It also solves the problem of keeping your projects safe. So I just recently had to completely erase and reinstall everything on my computer. I knew ahead of time, so I was able to save most things, but I'm real lucky that I used GitHub because there were definitely things that I did not think to save. They were on GitHub, they're backed up to the cloud. It also makes it easy with an asterisk to share and collaborate with other people. I kind of designed this whole thing thinking about people who are building OERs mostly. But librarians are building OERs too. Jody just showed us like these excellent, very involved spreadsheets and Word files full of resources that
probably other scholars besides our specific scholars could use. You could store them in GitHub, and 1, they're safe, 2, they're discoverable, 3, you have version control, so you can always know what your most recent version of that document is. And if you need to go back, you can go back to a previous version. I think that's true with Word docs. GitHub is built around text. It's built around, you're doing text files, you're doing, you have CSVs for your data. If you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. So a lot of people, when they're using GitHub, tend to save things as text rather than Word or Excel. But you can put any file you want to in GitHub. I just shouldn't make you promises about being able to get to the older version of it. I don't know. I'll look that up if anyone wants to know. Oh, the asterisk. There's a learning curve. Most people say it takes about a day to get good enough at GitHub that you're comfortable using it and collaborating with other people. I teach my Python 1s in an hour, and each of them is able to keep their own projects just by themselves in GitHub, and they're good. We go back over commands, and this is on the command line. So there are visual GitHub apps. As part of the reason GitHub is so popular, there's an app for Windows, Mac, and Linux. You don't have to use it on the command line. There's this idea that because it was written for programmers, it's incredibly technical and hard to use. It can be a little hard to use, but it's like anything. You learn the steps. There are like 5 commands that I use almost daily, and that's it. Like it's not hard once you know how to do it. Kind of like anything. Everyone in here is capable of learning GitHub. It would not be a problem for you. So, kind of trying to speed through because I don't want to make us late for strategic planning. So you've got your content locally on your machine, you've got it on the cloud, which means if you have set it to be public, something you'll find in a lot of the older GitHub tutorials, and by older I mean more than a year, is they'll tell you, oh, you have to pay for a private repository. That changed. Microsoft bought GitHub, and now you can have free private repositories, which aren't very open. But I think this is maybe a librarian instinct, but I know a lot of us are very nervous about sharing our works in progress. Yeah. Oh, it's not perfect. I don't want to share it yet. That's fine. If that is your approach, make it a private repo and change it to public when you're ready to share. I did not do that with this, so people definitely saw it in progress, and it was fine. The benefit of GitHub over just putting this on your faculty website, aside from your faculty website is really hard for someone else to copy and change and make better, unless you have it backed up to GitHub, is that other people can make changes. It's a button. Part of the reason I did this in GitHub so I could show you. This button right here, fork. What this would do is, if this were in someone else's GitHub account, it would make a copy automatically into my GitHub account. And then there would be a little link up here to their stuff. So attribution is kind of automatic. You shouldn't rely on that. You should manually attribute all of your things too. But it gives you kind of this nice path, and I'll show you in an example of what work has been done on it and who's been able to use it. And if they want to, let's say you put a book on GitHub, which you absolutely can. I'll show you one. They could write 3 new chapters that they've got on their GitHub, and that's great, and they're perfect for their class. But let's say they're really good, and you actually want them to be part of the original book. Say you're the project founder. They can make what's called a pull request. It doesn't matter. They make a request, and you can decide yes or no. I want to add this to my project. It's really cool. Super powerful. You can pull in content. As I said, you can add any kind of file. As you can see, this is the simplest kind of GitHub. I made a markdown file, and I embedded some images. This is as simple as GitHub gets. But it wasn't a problem. It was very easy to embed this other content. I could pull in code from other people's GitHub project. It makes remixing so easy. Indexed by Google, discoverable. The 6th R, people can file bug reports. They can go, oh, you know, you totally missed this important concept, which is a pro and a con. You've got these typos. If they're nice, what they'll do is they'll make the changes and then offer that to you as a pull request. But they can also just make a bug report. Scroll up again. Sorry to make you dizzy. All of your issues show up here. I tried to get people to give me issues, but no one did. The pull request where someone offers to make a change are right here. We're not going to talk about GitHub wikis today. It's fine. They're great. They're just a different thing. And yeah, so I mean, there's a ton of benefits to it. We are not going through all of these examples, but you really can. You can just use GitHub to back up your course website. So you've got, you know, your things are open. We have a colleague at CCAC who puts all of his stuff on a website outside of CCAC, which is great, but I assume he has it all backed up on GitHub. I actually haven't checked. This guy puts all of his things on GitHub, and like this counts as an OER in my opinion. Like, yes, it's just source code for a website, but it's so easy for me to go in and download it and then make it into my own kind of website and post it on my server. And if you're that fancy, that's great. You can do that. What's really cool and the really like powerful thing I want to show you is GitHub will serve static web pages for you. So you can have your code in GitHub and then have, for instance, a book. And all of the code for this book is just in GitHub. Someone can go, and 55 people have, last I checked, fork this, make changes, make updates to this book if they want to, or just have a different version of it for themselves. And I mean, it looks and feels just like a book, but it's a website. Jody mentioned, I forget how she phrased it, but it was you can have a website that you can teach from. Was kind of this person ran it's actually using OER, doing OER with GitHub session at a library conference, and he taught from this GitHub page. It's the theme is workshop template. So he was running a workshop from this page, and he has a ton of examples. It's all really nice. Everyone points at this musician kind of first thing because we're not just technical people. They're medievalists using GitHub to store their syllabi. And actually, I did point at a couple of syllabi. At a very minimum, for people teaching classes, please put your syllabi on GitHub. It's really beneficial. As someone who is kind of a newer semester-long course teacher, it really benefits, especially your newer colleagues, but really everyone, to be able to see how other people are approaching their syllabi. Do this with your instruction sessions too, please, librarians. Like, yes, it's a one-shot, but other people can learn how to do better one-shots from that. I did point at software carpentry is amazing. They do a lot of work on, they think a lot about pedagogy. They think a lot about inclusion. They are all very good tech teachers. They train other people to be good tech teachers. And if you wanted to learn Git, their Git novice lesson is, you could do worse. It's pretty good. This one's kind of in between the web page and book idea. I guess it's more like a web page. These are designed to be gone through during workshops, but they, like I do, they write everything they're going to say and then a little bit more. So you can teach yourself directly from software carpentry, and I have in the past. And that's about it. This is all on here. There's was there anything else that was really vital to say? No, that was pretty much it. Like, use GitHub, it's really nice. There is someone on your campus who knows how to use it. If you're at CCAC, I know there are at least 3 of us. And I, at least, am always happy to help. Thanks.
And we will link to this. Okay, fantastic. Perfect. I'll send you the, yeah, send that to us. I'm going to try to find Jeremy.
Okay.
So let's do.
Hey, Laureen, are you?
Oh, good. We can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, Jeremy, so if you just give me another minute here.
Sure.
All right, our next speaker is coming remotely for us, but he, there you go. Okay, so we're going to move into the strategic planning part, which I put out an initial survey to see what everyone's interested in learning about. The strategic plan was like by far what people were most interested in. So I think the rest of today we're going to be looking at just kind of like getting the vision and the mission set, trying to figure out your partners on campus, and then go into different ways that you can connect with people on campus. Jeremy Anderson, I saw him lead a workshop in May at the Northeast OER Summit that was extremely helpful. I had really just great reactions, and we asked him to come here and help us get started. So if you open up your folder, you should have a paperclip packet with some resources that we'll be using, and hopefully you also have a pen. If you don't have a folder, okay, yeah, we can grab a folder for you to make sure you have all the resources. And I just want to go ahead and introduce Jeremy. Jeremy's background is in teaching and learning, technology, and their intersection. He has taught at the secondary and higher educational levels, designed distance learning programming, managed a wide variety of technology implementations, and provided strategic leadership to technology teams. He pursues a personal mission of expanding access to high-quality education, including through the promotion of OER. Jeremy currently serves as on the leadership team at the American Women's College, where he oversees course design, user support, data and analytics, and institutional research. And Jeremy is a doctoral candidate in the field of interdisciplinary leadership at Creighton University. And so I'm very excited to introduce Jeremy. And is that all good, Jeremy? Ready to go?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thanks for the introduction. So I do have another person here with me in spirit that I did want to just really quickly give a quick shout out to her. That's Jillian Maynard. She is a reference librarian at the University of Hartford, and she's really the leader of their campus OER initiative, but she's also been working very strongly with the public sphere in Connecticut to bring along public and private institutions across the state to see how we can move forward on OER adoptions on a much larger scale. So she and I have been teaming up. I'm in Massachusetts. I'm trying to accomplish, some of the same type of work, working with other institutions here in our area. So we came together at the Northeast OER Consortium and kind of shared this experience of, on two campuses, what's it like to be making a strategic plan around OER, but then as we're working across campuses, what does that look like? So that was really the goal, and Melody reached out after she attended this session at Northeast OER Consortium, and this was an opportunity to kind of bring that same experience and background to you all. So I did prepare a presentation today, and I will share my screen momentarily, but I did want to talk through what hopefully is in your packet first, and maybe I'll start the screen share here, and we can look at these documents before I get started with any talking. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So the first document is probably the most important one. It's the OER initiative planning outline, and you're going to see that it's kind of modularized. As we go through the session, you'll be plugging different pieces in at different times. So that'll be kind of the anchor that we work with. The idea is that you can bring this document back to your campus and start to circulate it and share it, with other stakeholders as you undertake this work. So very important document for today. One of the other documents will be a stakeholder analysis matrix. This is one you'll see we're going to plug in at one point stakeholders into this larger document. This really lets you think through some particulars about who those stakeholders might be, and we'll just then roll that up, in a very high level into the planning document. And then there is going to be some homework, because we won't have time to get to this, around the readiness and analysis gap. If you have this, sketch of a plan that we're going to start here today, then having you go back to your campus and complete a readiness assessment along, I think there are 5 or 6 categories here, like leadership and vision. We've got data and technology. So anyways, you'll go through this document after today, and that's where you're going to start to see, all right, here's some real strengths that I'm going to be able to work from, but then here are some weaknesses that I'm going to have to account for. So those are the big documents. If you have out in front of you as we go through the planning outline, that'll be a place where you can kind of jot down notes too. We will get to a part, hopefully pretty quickly, about 15 minutes in, where I'm going to be done with most of my talking, and it's going to be time for you guys to start working together in groups into some timed activities that we have planned. And that's where really at the Northeast OER Consortium, where we delivered this last, that's where the magic really happens. So hearing and sharing amongst each other what's been working at your campus, because each campus is different, and we need to have a real toolbox of strategies and approaches if we're all going to be successful. So that was just the introduction. I do have a short presentation here where I just want to talk through some very basic ideas around change management and diffusion of innovations, kind of thinking about adopter categories. That's all going to really be a good framework for you when you start to think about how this plan will get framed and who you should be going to leverage the most out of your activities moving this forward on campus. So that's kind of the general idea. Let me start up the presentation here. So we did introductions, great. We do have some initiatives cooking, like I said, on both of our campuses, Jillian and I. So at Bay Path University, where I'm at, we do have an OER committee that services the whole institution, but really I serve in the college, the American Women's College, a very specific subgroup where we have a centralized course management model, which is not very typical across higher ed. All sections of English 100, for example, get the same content. So what we've been able to do is take an OER first strategy by working with our 9 to 10 program directors. And at this point, almost a third of our course catalog is either OER or no cost material. And we've done this in all of our high enrollment courses. We're saving about $500,000 a year now at this point through all of these different adoptions for our students. What we've done, though, through the OER committee for the more traditional undergraduate experience is we definitely had a piloted stipend model. We're bringing it back. We got some more funding for that. So we'll share a little bit as we get into the strategies part of the day around types of incentives like this that might work. But this is definitely one that we found really helped traditional faculty who are more used to academic freedom. It really helped bolster adoption there. And then at the University of Hartford, where Jillian is, she's been really working a ton with external groups. So the OpenStax Institutional Partnership Program, she also went through the Spark Leadership Program and has nothing but awesome things to say about that process. Really helped her think through, intentional planning of how she was going to launch an OER initiative. So we're bringing back some of her learning from that experience, and we're kind of peppering it into this presentation. So at this point, she's done a couple of different initiatives. She's done a textbook review workshop. This is another model that we can talk about when we get to strategies, this idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be adoption that you're spurring. It could be even smaller than that, where you're just building up awareness and you're providing maybe some stipends for faculty to review content and just kind of give it their seal of approval. So anyways, she's been working through a lot of different initiatives at the University of Hartford. So if you want to reach out to either one of us to hear more about particulars of what you're seeing here or what we're talking about, we are more than happy to have conversations. And I think Melody has our contact info. She can share that more widely. So what we're going to do today is really 3 things. First, we're going to look at change model and particularly transformational layers of the organization that you can start to work with to really lever the influence that they have at your organization to then spur much larger changes than you could ever do on your own. So we'll take a look at that. We will look at adopter categories in this diffusion of innovations model. This is very important, and some of it's intuitive. We know early adopters, late adopters, and we think in that mindset, but there's very particular research that talks about how we can best work with each of those adopter categories, what kinds of communication styles are most effective. So this is something that hopefully, as you start to think through the strategies that you're going to use, you'll be able to glom on to some of that research base that I'm going to distill here in just a moment. And then the final thing, after I introduce some of those very basic concepts, we will go through a series of exercises where you apply some of that plus your institutional knowledge and sharing amongst each other to then create some of this strategic plan for yourselves. So that is the big goal. I will pause here and see if there are any questions before we get rolling into the real meat of stuff today.
I think we're good.
All right, we're good. Fantastic. So I'm going to count on whoever's closest to the mic just to kind of give me cues. I'm going to ask questions along the way, and we'll have a time or two. So whoever's close, just help me out here and moderate in the room if you would. Okay, so the change model that I wanted to just introduce briefly is the Burke-Litwin model here, and some of you may be familiar with this. This is a pretty popular change model in organizational behavior literature. The idea is that there are really two domains within an organization. There's the transformative layer, and that's what you're seeing up here at the top. And then there's really the operational layer of how we take all of this, this important work that happens at the top within the culture, within the external environment, and how we filter that down into actual practices within the organization. So what we're talking about really is working at that transformational layer. And there are three things that you would want to consider. So there's mission and strategy, and that tends to be formal documents. Your institution might have a strategic plan, or it might have a mission and vision on the website. But this is the kind of the anchor of what makes the organization move. And anything that you do with OER or any other initiative really should tie back into that mission and strategy so that you have a shared language across campus around why this new initiative is important. So the mission and strategy, we'll just talk briefly a little bit more about that. And then you guys will actually start to think through and draft out what your OER mission or vision might be and how it would connect back. The next domain is really leadership. So who is it at the top of the organization who's going to move stuff forward and who's going to add it to the institutional agenda so that we have working groups set up and then processes and stipends and all of that operational layer. But you're going to need somebody or multiple somebodies in the leadership domain who are really going to see, real worth for the institution and for students and faculty. So we'll talk very briefly about that. I'll ask some pointed questions. And then organizational culture. The idea here is that each institution around the table here today has a very different culture, and how that culture kind of seeps into any conversation, whether it be about OER or any other initiative, is really important. So you have to work within this matrix. And if you do, you're going to have success. And if you kind of swim against it or don't really tap into it, that's when the sledding can get a lot more tough. So the mission and vision here, the opening question is, what is your institution's mission, vision, and strategy? And if you don't have that at your fingertips, just kind of think about when leadership talks to you in town halls or when they're sending out the welcome back messages, what's that thing that they're always trying to convey about the institution? And then the second question is, how can you start to borrow some of that language and put it into your OER mission and vision and strategic plan? So there's nothing, totally transformative about that. I did want to provide, though, the example at the American Women's College. We do have a strategic plan, and what you see here is really the mission. I've kind of highlighted two elements of that. We want accessible learning, and when we say accessible, we mean in all ways, so that it meets accessibility standards, but that it's also low cost and that diverse students are able to come in and learn equally. So access is huge for us. And the other thing is we expect students to reach completion. So we set very high retention and graduation goals. So this is what we convey continuously in our town hall meetings, in our large communications from the leadership team. And that's the document that I went to, where I then drafted the OER mission and goal that we put into the strategic plan. And again, I've kind of highlighted the pieces of that goal here. We definitely hit on the low prices of OER and tied that back to the access of education. And then this idea of reaching completion, we have a whole initiative around course design and promoting student learning engagement and success. So I brought that language in, and that ties right back to the completion. So the idea here is that you're just going to find some keywords at the institutional level, and you're going to pull them down into your mission or vision when you start to make this plan. So that's the idea of the mission. The leadership, there are some particular things here where I think we all know that the provost is probably going to be one of the most important people to have on our side. The director of the library or the university librarian will be important, but there are some groups that you may not have been considering who may be able to lend support, or traditionally may have opposed some of these initiatives because they can cost money through, you know, stipends and things of that nature. So some folks who I would kind of seed into this so that you're thinking, how do they fit, would particularly be the chief financial officer. And that's the person at the end of the day, he or she is going to have the purse strings and oversee the major budget. So when you're thinking about how to pitch it to somebody like that, you'll want to be thinking about things like tuition recovery. If we adopt OER, we can expect more students to complete their courses, and therefore we're, you know, attaining higher revenue. And this is not something we typically think about when we're going to talk about OER. We're much more talking about the pedagogy with faculty and the experience of students being able to save money on textbooks. So think about that chief financial officer. There's good research coming out now around the effectiveness of OER and how it gets students to persist. So you'll want to start to take that research and think about how you could lever it into a conversation with the finance group. The other group that I would say is really important is advancement. And again, this isn't a group that we tend to think about, but that's the group who's going to go and find the grants for you. They're going to find potential donors who would, you know, kick in money to support a stipend program. So you will want to connect with somebody in advancement, you know, whether it be the chief advancement officer or one of their, you know, folks who's out there working with major donors, or however your organization is organized. You'll want to think about advancement. And then instructional design, again, we probably all work with them and it's top of mind, but that's a group that you're going to want to get in early in the process, because they have, it'll almost be a two-pronged approach where the library is talking to them, but then the instructional design team is talking to them. And if they're hearing two different change agents talking about the same benefits to teaching and learning, you're going to get, you know, even more conversion of faculty members and more excitement amongst the faculty members. So just think through some of these questions that are up here. We'll get to this part for the stakeholder matrix, you know, very shortly here. The last piece is around organizational culture. Again, each organization has a different culture. This is a very famous model from O'Reilly, Chapman, and Caldwell, again, from the Organizational Behavior Leadership. I've linked to this article. It's a really cool one to read. There's an actual instrument that you could go back to your institution and think through which of the underlying 50 or so qualities are most applicable to your organization. And then when you add up those, you'll arrive here at one of these particular types of cultures. And again, you probably innately know this. If your institution feels very innovative, they're out there doing a lot of different things. And if they're a more stable organization, they like to take a lot of time. They go out to committees and there's a lot of deliberation. So all of these different cultures, they're going to lend themselves differently to the conversation. And that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize here. So if you're going to be talking about OER in different cultural contexts, if you're an outcomes-oriented organization, everybody, all they ever want to talk about is the bottom line. So when you're talking about OER, the bottom line is satisfaction is going to improve, course completion is going to improve, we're going to decrease the price of attendance. And ideally, you have some research and some numbers to put along with that if it's an outcome-oriented organization. Whereas if it's a stable organization, the way you're going to talk about OER is going to be very different, where instead you're going to, you know, try to find some of those, you know, patterns of behavior that have been working. So maybe academic freedom is the thing that is really important on your campus. So you would glom onto that and talk about the fact that OER is really going to empower faculty more to have their academic freedom by matching their content to all of these learning outcomes that have been vetted over years and years. So that's how you might pitch it in a stable organization. And then if you're innovative, you're going to be talking about all the awesome, cool things about what the 5 Rs allow you to do and revolutionize pedagogy by having students authoring OER along with faculty. And that's really going to resonate in that kind of culture. So the idea here is that you're just going to kind of take all of the benefits of what OER has to offer, and you're going to really start to distill it for your particular institution and what you know it to be like. So that's the idea of the change model. And then the diffusion of innovations, it's really just, we break all folks in the system into categories. We've got a small group who are going to be innovators. Those are the folks who are going to do OER without any intervention. They're just going to hear about it and they're going to do it on their own. Then we've got this next chunk of people who are the early adopters, who they hear about it from the innovators, or they might hear about it from you. They'll want a little bit of support, but they're going to run with it too. And it's that last huge chunk where it's what we call the early majority, late majority, and the laggards. Those are the folks who kind of wait back on the sidelines to see how that first group of folks fare with their OER adoption. Your goal is to cross the chasm, is what they call it. So connect those early adopters and innovators with those other categories of folks. And the research has a lot of good indication about how, first of all, you find those early adopters, and then how you connect them through communication. So basically what it boils down to, those early adopters, we're probably going to know who they are. If you can think on your campus, who are those folks who are really tied into a lot of different committees, who are the folks who are on an upward trajectory, they're really trending towards department leadership and potentially school leadership. They tend to come from larger groups too, where there's a diversity of opinions. They are the folks who are then going to be interacting as well with change agents. They're the ones who are going to be out there doing their own research. If they're really susceptible, if you send out a mass communication, a mass email, they're the folks who are going to respond and say, oh, great, do you have any more information? So be thinking about these characteristics and who on your campus really fits this mold here that we're seeing. Those are the folks who you're going to want to, really seek out in the beginning. So that early adopter category is going to be very important. And the way this works is, once you've kind of figured out who falls into these categories, you tailor your communication. So that first batch of folks, it's going to be the mass communication. You're going to send emails, or maybe you go to a department meeting and you just make a presentation. These folks are going to be in the room, they're going to think it through, and then they're going to take some action. They might come back to you for some light one-on-one adoption support, but really your job here is just to get it on their radar and get them excited about it. So again, picking in that communication plan, picking some things that resonate with your institutional culture or with your leadership or with your mission, you're going to want to bake that into that communication. Once you have those early adopters, the next thing is you want to leverage them and bring them to that other group who are going to be the early majority, late majority, and the laggards. And you want to start to use some socialization tactics. So the way that this works really well, we've seen at different organizations, bringing those folks to office hours, or having them do a quick video spotlight that you can then send out and share with different faculty. Having them tag along and do a presentation to their department, so that maybe they get some more of the folks in their department interested. So there's lots of different ways though that you can get those folks to be on your side and to continue to spread the message. And that's really important, because at this point in the process, it's less about you and me, and it's much more about the folks who are actually changing, influencing others who haven't changed yet to adopt OER. So that'll be kind of in the middle, probably year 2, I would say, in your plan. And then the final is going to be that last batch of people, the late majority and the laggards, who are just going to need a ton of support. And that's where you are going to become important, very important again, where you're going to want to, really sit down with them and see if you can convert. But again, the OER is not going to be for everybody. So that's also, you have to decide along this curve how much adoption is the ideal adoption. And that's what your strategic plan will kind of work towards. So if you are happy with getting to this place where you have a really stable set of courses that are running, and we've got, a penetration in a couple of key areas on campus, then that is a very good place to be. And maybe you don't get into the laggards and the late majority, because it is such an investment of time and effort on your part and other change agents' part. So that's the whole idea here. The last piece is just how are you going to be successful with those groups? And really, obviously, the communication we've talked about, you need to link the change to OER to faculty needs. We tend to talk a lot about what's going to benefit the student or what's going to benefit the organization. Think really, what is it that turns the faculty's head? And if you think through maybe some of the resistance that they bring up around the amount of effort that goes into a change like this, that's the thing that you need to start to think, like, what they need is probably something that's going to be very easily adopted, something that they can try out, that they can hold in their hand. They're going to need support, so they're going to need instructional design to get all of that material into the LMS. So you're going to want to build that into that communication early on to kind of lower the barrier for them to adopt OER. And you will want to work through those early thought leaders, those opinion leaders. The other thing that really is beneficial, again, this is all research-based, but being like those who you hope to change. So if you know that there's somebody in a department who has a very similar background, academic background, or some other thing that you can connect to, that is going to be hugely important. The more folks view you like them, they are more willing to receive the message of changing. And that's not just OER, that's all things in general. So those are all the successful change behaviors that you would want to adopt and bring into the the one-on-ones and the mass communication that you're going to carry out. So that tends to be the kind of the big framework that I wanted to introduce. I do want to take a quick break here to see if we do have any questions about anything that I just presented, because now what we're going to do is go through the actual activities where you guys are going to apply some of that and think about your institutional context and combine it all into a planning document. So are there any questions?
I don't see any questions at this time.
What's that?
I don't see any questions at this time, so I think everyone's ready to apply.
All right, cool. So the first activity, we're going to spend about 10 minutes on this. The idea is consider your institutional mission, vision, or strategy. And if you have a laptop, if you can open it up and navigate to your institution's website and see if you can bring that up, all the better. If not, just kind of be thinking about what that mission and vision is. Again, that would be very consistently communicated through leadership at the institution. And then very briefly, sketch out what your OER initiative, the mission and vision will be. And we're going to have you just jot that down into the planning outline. The idea here of a mission, if you've not worked with these terms before, and I apologize if you have, the mission is, what is it that we're going to do? So you saw when I presented what the American Women's College mission was, we are going to make content more or lower cost, and we're also going to make it so that our courses are encouraging completion, period. That's the mission. That's what we're after here with our OER initiative. So you're going to think about that. What is it that we are actually doing? And then the vision is forward-looking. In a year from now and 2 years from now, if we achieve this mission, what does our organization look like and how is it different? So for us, that would mean that our persistence and graduation rates are at this level and that the price of attendance has dropped to this level. So not that you have to be that explicit, but that would be the vision, is in the future at the American Women's College, we would have achieved decreased cost of attendance and we would have improved graduation rates, period. So this is your opportunity to think through what makes sense. And if you haven't figured out yet, we're an outcomes-based organization where we talk a lot about what's the end state going to be. But if yours is a more innovative, you might want to take in some of that language around, how are we going to revolutionize teaching and learning? But again, this is your opportunity to make a mission and vision that connects back to your institution. So sketch it out, and then we're going to share really quickly, and then I think we'll probably skip whole group, but if you can maybe team up in that share pod, if you have maybe 2 or 3 folks who you can turn to and just share, talk through similarities, differences, any major ahas that you had. So that's this part of the activity. I do have a 10-minute timer. I'm going to start that now, and when we get to the end, I'm just going to ask that somebody help me bring the group back together. Sound good?
That's great. And I know
all right.
Some institutions, multiple people, if you guys want to move or shift to work together on that, that's great.
Yeah, that would be great. If I didn't realize that there were folks, multiple folks from the same institution, but that would be even more powerful because then you get two people thinking through the same context. But then, yeah, if you can share amongst institutions at some point, that'd be even better.
Okay, so I feel like the language that we can steal and
I think it is a choice because accessible also means like,
Just wanted to make a 4-minute warning. So the goal is to have stuff written down. So if you haven't yet started to jot down, you might want to start thinking about that. But I love the communication that's going on, the conversation.
Yeah, that's why hard items. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
All right, we have about a minute left. How are we feeling about where we are?
We've got some good stuff. Jerry, are we supposed to be sharing these amongst different institutions now?
All right, are we ready to come back?
Okay, all right, I think we're gonna come back. So thank you guys for the great conversation. And we're gonna be having lunch after this presentation, so it'll be a great time to continue talking about these things you're sharing. But Jeremy,
I'm having a tough time.
I think we're gonna talk about the next activity.
Are we good to move forward?
Pointing down? Okay. All right, thank you guys. We're gonna move on to the next step. Thank you, Jeremy. We're ready to go.
All right, fantastic. So this next step, really quickly, what we're going to do is have you guys go through and think through what individuals you might be reaching out to as stakeholders. And what you're really going to want to do is identify at that leadership, that transformational layer, who is it who you think is going to be your best champion to move it forward at the, at the executive level, who might be your early adopters, who might resist, who you might want to get onto your side if at all possible. And if you're going to set up an OER committee, which is something that we would definitely suggest, who might sit on that committee. And these can all be the same people or they might be different, but think through that and then start to fill out your stakeholder matrix. And what we're going to do is then at the very end, just transfer those stakeholders onto the planning document. You don't have to bring all of their information over, just kind of jot down a high level, I'm going to go to the provost, I'm going to go to the director of instructional design, so on and so forth. So this is a good opportunity to now take out that stakeholder matrix and actually start to fill that out. That looks like this in your packet. So we're going to ask a couple of different questions. Think through, like I said, just a couple of those different categories of folks, hopefully getting 1 to 2 examples of each. And we'll bring this back again in about 10 minutes. I'm looking at time, so we hopefully can stick to the 10 minutes on this one, because the most important is then talking about the strategies that you're going to use. And I do want to give a good amount of time for that. So I may cut this short after about 8 minutes, right at about 11:50, if that's all right with folks. But here we go. We're going to wind this one down a little bit early at 11:50, so just make sure that you're transitioning to jotting down some contacts onto your planning outline if you haven't done so already, and we'll be back here in about 2 minutes as a group.
Here in about 2 minutes, we're going to have to quickly wind down so we can finish up more. Yeah.
All right, are we ready to bring it back?
We've got some lessons to make, so we will make sure we catch the last portion. So if you can go ahead and get ready.
Thank you guys for writing down, and go ahead, Jeremy. Thank you.
All right, great. So this last set of time that we're going to have here, really the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to get into that strategy. You know, what are you actually going to be doing to carry out this plan? Some very targeted ideas. So what I did is I just collected a couple here that you can kind of think through. Would it work on my campus? But these are ones that, after having talked with folks on my campus, at Jillian's campus, our colleagues at the state level in Connecticut, these are things that we've all seen work, you know, pretty well across institutions. Things like having that executive sponsor, setting up an OER committee that has a lot of different stakeholders at the table, having a really clear plan like what we're working on today, and getting the student voice, however that can happen, whether it be through committee membership or a survey, or maybe you develop a partnership with student leadership. The student PIRGs, if your institution has PIRG that's on campus, that's a really good group to work with. But these are successful strategies. And then we've also had some other ones, much more operational layer, where you might have customized pitches. So you would create a presentation deck that you could trade out different components depending on who you're going to speak to. Aligning up support units like instructional design, making sure other folks in the library are on board, perhaps IT if the LMS is going to come into play. So just making sure that you've socialized this idea with all of those people and making sure that they're in support. And then the incentives is a huge one. We talked about the adopt, adapt, write stipend model, where you start with a small stipend if a faculty member is just going to adopt a book. If they're going to make light edits to it, you might pay them a little bit more. If they're going to go and author their own OER resource, you'd give them yet more. But then there's also that model of if they're just going to review content and kind of weigh in on it, you might give them $100 or $200. That's what they did at UHeart. But there are other incentives that may work better at your institution. So release time, service points towards tenure, doing something like a rewards or recognition where faculty come together and share their OER stories. That can be really powerful. Getting it into a note from the provost that goes out to the campus, for example, could be good recognition. But these are the types of strategies on these two slides that you'll want to start to think through what will work at my institution. And that's really what this next couple of minutes is going to be. Just pick, 3 or 4 strategies that are going to work. And if you can tie it back to the way that adoptions work, where maybe you're thinking in the early phases, what are some mass communications that I could do? In the middle phase, what are some strategies I could use to link early adopters with that next batch of early majority, and then later on in the process, what are some really good one-on-one strategies? That could be a framework to think about it, or you could just have at it and say, here are 3 or 4 things that will work really well. So what you'll do is just then transfer that into the strategies box in the planning matrix. So that's where we're headed. I know we're short on time, so it's definitely not going to be 15 minutes, but let's bring it back, and hopefully we have at least 1 or 2 minutes here where we can kind of share out and you guys can raise up some of the best ideas. So I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to set the timer instead to we'll put it at 4 minutes. I know that's really tight. So have some really awesome conversation, and then we'll save like the last minute, hopefully go around the room and just share some cool ideas. So, all right, do it to it.
All right. Oh no! No,
Yeah, well, if we can't do that, it's like we
All right, we're at 11:59, right at the close here. Can we maybe just go around the room and share a couple of ideas? And I'd love, it's really hard for me here at the group, so if somebody at the front could maybe share them. What I'm going to do is jot down in case I can bring this to other institutions. So a share out really quickly if we can.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mary. There's still, Christina, we have our lunch sheet. We cut it out this morning for putting that down. We have a couple more minutes, but if you guys can hear me, that we can share out some of our ideas, and that way we can all benefit from what we discussed here. Does anybody want to volunteer to start by sharing? And Jeremy, just to clarify, we're sharing our strategies that we came up with. Is that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So if anyone has a strategy, if you can just talk into the microphone, that way you can make sure Jeremy can hear you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Parney. I'm from IUP. This is an idea that I'm going to try to do this coming semester that I got out of ACRL and then also at LOEX. There was a lot of mini courses happening around these subjects for people to, a way to reach more people, no longer hold workshops that like 3 people show up to, as a way to reach more people and at their point of need, and then they can just kind of pick where they want to jump in at. Community college librarian did a presentation at ACRL who did a mini course through, they had Coursera, or they didn't have D2L, I forget what course management system, but he literally ran a 2-week course for faculty. He designed an OER 1 and an OER 2 course that that faculty could take. And so I saw I've been seeing a lot of kind of variations of that to reach people and, like you said, get people talking and get these ideas on their radar.
Does anyone else have any of the strategies that they're moving forward? I know that Amanda and I are both in Duquesne, and we talked about trying to develop a cohort of the early adopters. So as we try to cross that chasm, I think I've been working individually with faculty over the course of the past year, but kind of bringing together as like a cohesive unit to try to make that. Anyone else have any other strategies? Maybe it's a strategy that you've already used and it's worked well that other people might benefit from. All right, that's what, we don't have anyone else raising their hand at this point, Jeremy, but.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that we're heading to lunch here, so I'm standing between you and that. Where we're going to kind of leave this is the homework that's ahead of you now that you've kind of thought through what your mission and vision might be, like who the stakeholders are, what strategies you might use. Now going back and finding out, or really reflecting on what are the gaps and what do you need to start working on, what stakeholders are really going to help you move it forward. So there is that document, the OER Readiness Assessment, that it provides a really good framework that if you think through a lot of different elements of your organization, you'll come out the other end with an idea of, all right, if this is where I'm heading, these are the steps that I'm going to need to take to get there. So that is the homework, and the only other thing is I've linked in some further readings, some of that organizational research that I was alluding to earlier. If you're interested in learning more about that and how it can inform the way that you carry out this plan, I would really encourage. These are tools that I've used now in my last 3 jobs, and it's helped me scale up everything from adaptive learning to OER to lecture capture in classrooms. So it's all evidence-based, and you will get to the promised land if you use some of this research. So I did provide that in there, but that's really it. So if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Jillian. We both love to have conversations about this. But that's really it for today. So thank you all for being such a lively bunch and having so many wonderful ideas.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I thank you also for mentioning Jillian. I meant to mention her in the beginning, but she was also very instrumental in preparing this. So we appreciate your help and your offering to be available to people. And yeah, I think we're going to have some lively conversation through lunch based on this presentation. So, thank you.
All right, awesome. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
And Lorraine's down. We had lunch since we were, but Midnight Road apparently is flooded, so we're trying to figure out if they have a boat or something to deliver that. But hopefully, she's working that out right now. But if you guys want to continue talking, there's still like some fruit and peaches back there, and we will let you know when everything's available. Oh, and just to mention, restrooms, if you go out these doors, men's restrooms are off to the right, women's restrooms are off to the left, walk right to the right of the elevator. I mean, I think you can
Right, yeah. Yes, luckily ours is much smaller. Yes, right, yeah. That's so good. Spilling out. Oh my god, I was like that. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I just wondered if there was
Yes, we were just going to ask you if you would mind.
No, yeah. Okay.
And they showed up now.
Okay. So everybody, we just got word from, we had lunch from Panera. They are located in Midnight Road, which is flooded. They said that they can be here by 1 o'clock. So we do have some fruit left. There's some pastries in the back that we'll do over. And I'm sorry about the late lunch, but I figure we're going to go ahead and swap the schedule a little bit so we can go ahead and get all the presentations in and be done at the same time that we were planning. Yeah, so if you guys want to take a minute, grab any fruit, and again, I apologize for the delay.
Well, do you have any extra over 5 minutes late?
Oh, is there anything else? I don't think so.
Okay, maybe.
These folders, I think, are missing.
The
No, this one's right. This actually has everything.
Okay.
So should be good.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, and everyone, go ahead and introduce Rebecca. Rebecca Elenick she's going to talk about faculty experience. So she's been really thinking about using OERs in her courses. And so I'm just going to give you an introduction. Rebecca has been teaching multimedia arts for 14 years across numerous schools. So teaching game design and virtual reality simulations in industry programs such as Epic, Unreal, the need for open educational resources has become an area of focus. The reason she chose to focus on multimedia development was due to being able to keep up and work with evolving technologies in media. Additionally, the synthesizing of different programming languages, game engines, and hardware from augmented reality on phones, 3D development for virtual reality, and artificial intelligence integration, it is important to continue to push limits. With pushing the limits, she thinks it is also important to share the findings and processes, which makes OERs an important topic. So, thank you. Thank you.
Great. Hello, everybody. So I always like to start out as far as talking a little bit here. Again, my name is Rebecca Elenich. I am the department head of Computer Information Sciences here at the North Campus in West Hills Center. I always start out with this story regarding why did I get into OERs. I'd say it was about 2 years ago. I was teaching a class using the Unreal Engine, and I was working also, I had required 2 textbooks for my class. In total, that came to about $120 per student. The irony of the whole situation was commonly we have to have our textbook requests in about midsummer, and what happened was pretty much by the time we got to the class, Unreal decided to update their software and the books were out of date. So the books were out of date, and my students spent $120 before we even got into the classroom. And at that point, that was kind of the straw that broke my back, and I said enough is enough. I also wanted to talk briefly Christine, Lorraine, Ross, all of the librarians here at CCAC North. Very much so, we have been in discussions as far as OER. I was one of the faculty members. I didn't realize I was doing OER. I did not realize that all of the lectures, all of the PowerPoints that I was making, all of the videos that I was making for my students, the assignments, the worksheets, you name it, were technically OERs. So to give you a little bit of background here, I would actually just, piggybacking on our previous presentation here, we, at least here in CIT here, we are more along the lines of innovation here. Here at the North Campus, we actually house the multimedia program. This is where the VR and AR take place. We also deal with data analytics here at the North Campus. Also, we deal with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and we also have the computer information technologies here at the North Campus as well. So one thing that I often get asked about, and I wanted to talk a little bit about faculty pros and cons. To this point, we've been talking about as far as, you know, getting people to adopt. Well, what am I hearing and what am I dealing with from the faculty side? Also, too, as a department head, what am I dealing with here as far as helping faculty, you know, kind of jump onto the OER lifestyle, as I like to call it at this point. So my biggest pros, there have been so many times where I would sit there and say, well, I really like this chapter out of this textbook, but I don't want to make them buy 3 textbooks just because I like chapters 1, 5, and 10 out of textbook A, 2, 6, and 8 out of textbook B. The fact that I can remix and I can just build my own kind of textbook for the students to work through is awesome. I no longer feel guilty when I don't use a textbook cover to cover anymore for my students. So they didn't have to pay anything, and I don't take any form of heat from my students either. So they're just like, you know, okay, so we have multiple textbooks and multiple readings. Also, too, I can contribute to the body of knowledge. I was one of the OER grant recipients. Right now this summer, I am writing a textbook in a class on ethics of machine learning. So that is going to be completely open education resources, PowerPoints, assignments, and the textbooks. I'm actually using Pressbook as my platform to publish the texts. So also I'm saving my students money. I'd actually like to take a minute here and just hop over real quickly. This was something here that I had to present to our board here as far as multimedia in general. If you remember, Lorraine at the start talked about how many of my classes had gone 100% OERs. So our board here at CCAC was actually curious as far as the numbers and money-wise, what was I actually saving our students per class? And so this is stemming from, for each of these classes, what I did for the board was I estimated as far as the cost for a lot of these classes, what would the textbook be? Multimedia, we work with what is called the Adobe Creative Suite as well. Students can rent that for $20 a month. With that, it is not required for the class, but I did take into consideration I do have some students who do prefer to rent the software and just work on their home computers, which is fine. So from here, we went from fall of 17 to this past spring here as far as the savings in costs for all of the students. Again, a little bit of margin of error here because these might also be the same students, but really we're looking at about 35 to 50K that I was able to save the students overall. This is a very hardware intensive discipline. So I often tell my students, if you're not going to buy a textbook, go buy a computer that can handle the software that you're working with. So these are some of the options, and these are how I'm trying to combat the fact, because unfortunately we haven't gotten to the point of OER computers yet, which would be totally awesome if we did. So just to kind of come back here and continue on here just a little bit more real quick. Students can have the book day 1. I actually did have a student where by the second class, whenever I asked them, you know, I was asking if anybody had any questions on the chapters. I actually had a student say to me, I can't afford the textbook. This was in an OER class. It was very quiet in the classroom, and all the students are kind of looking at me like, how is she going to react? You know, I mean, I was surprised that it was so ingrained for them to say, I can't afford the textbook. That in an OER class, they told me they couldn't afford the textbook. So a lot of my students now, whenever they see my name down for the class, they just assume they're not going to need, they're going to get an OER textbook at this point. So I've also kind of gotten, you know, that image as well. Now, some of the things that your faculty might be thinking about as far as the negatives. Prepping and the grading. So many of these textbooks nowadays, they offer this ability where students can upload their projects, their assignments, and it will do the grading for them. Honestly, yes, that sounds amazing. Right now, I am teaching an OER web development class where I have 30 students online, which means 30 projects that I am grading. That class got filled pretty much within the first 3 weeks. Why? I'm guessing because when the students looked at the textbook and saw OER, everybody piled into the class at that point. So I have tons of grading I have to do. I don't have a textbook that has allowed me to grade. And honestly, even as a department head, this is one of the biggest pushbacks that I've heard from a lot of my faculty members is, well, can it auto grade for me? That was never an option for me in multimedia. So it's kind of this foreign idea to me. I wish somebody would have told me about it a little bit. And also prepping the classes. Yes, you know, my librarians here at CCAC North, they are amazing. It's like Christmas in my inbox whenever I'm getting, you know, hey, we found this stuff, you know, why don't you check it out? But the drawback is, you know, yes, we're finding textbooks, yes, we're finding articles, but the problem is, you know, I still have to go out and I have to work with Ross, our instructional designer, to actually generate and create a course at that point. So it is, that's why I say it's almost, for me, it's like OER is a lifestyle. That I have to be, you know, ready to be building, working, and prepping on all of this stuff. And yes, something that has come up a lot, depending on the area of focus and study, this could be tons of digging as far as trying to find content. Thankfully, a lot of computer information technologies, machine learning, also too, as far as multimedia and data analytics, a lot of the big companies have gotten the memo. They are starting to recognize now that, hey, textbooks are getting really expensive, so we are actually going now and seeing companies like Google where they are putting their learning content into Creative Commons right out of the gate. So this has been extremely helpful for our students. And then, yeah, going back, really that has really been probably one of the biggest things I've heard as a department chair is just, I'm going to need to grade. This is going to take a lot more time than what I figured. You know, I think it's a adapt and go is what a lot of folks are looking for. And unfortunately, I've even done digging. I am not ready to actually build a grading system or anything like that. So we're still kind of not quite there yet. So I kind of showed you that as far as the OER in multimedia. To talk about some of my classes. This was a text that I used called Eloquent JavaScript. It's actually probably a very cool textbook in my idea, whereby students can actually go in and actually practice the code within the textbook online. So often, previously it was, here is your physical copy of the textbook. We have to go now, let's go ahead, copy out of the textbook, write it on the computer screen, and then run our programs. We don't have to do that anymore. So while the students are actually reading through and they're working through the content directly in the book, they can actually go in and play around with it. So also it has a companion website. I asked just, you know, from an Adobe Suite standpoint for my students, I asked this class, it was actually my spring 17 class, I asked them how many were able to actually rent the Adobe Suite so that they could work from home. All of them put their hands up. This, not having to buy a $60, $70 textbook made the difference for them. So, also too, I've used the MIT Opencourseware, where for our first class that a lot of multimedia students take, which is Game Design and Simulation 1, where they learn about theory, design, and game layout, I was able to remix a lot of the OpenCourse assets as far as their PowerPoints, readings and video lectures, and incorporate them into my class as well, alongside with my own content. that I had developed over the years, again, not realizing I was developing OER assets. Moving right along here, now that I have, and again, I'm coming from a background of about 13 years of being an adjunct faculty member, where I could be bumped at a moment's notice or, be teaching. I was very protective of my content. I had an area that, VR, AR, now artificial intelligence, these are not common areas that, everybody, is walking around saying, oh yeah, totally know what that means. When I was an adjunct, I was actually very, very protective of my content. I really didn't want to share it. That was my livelihood as far as that goes, which is probably one of the other things that we are facing as far as trying to convince faculty to share. Now that I am, full-time tenure track, I'm like, yes, absolutely, share all this stuff. Why not? So, and I've actually done a lot of work now where, yes, I do work in OER Commons. I've done some different things as far as CCAC is concerned, where I'll do little activities and things that people can work through. So this is some of my original work. So you can see I'm under the share alike comments here that anybody needs to get started as far as teaching or working with the different editors and stuff like that. They can just go out to OER Commons, find my content, and they're able to get started. But again, this is pretty much a Saturday night with some, take out Chinese for me type of thing. It's, I do believe in the sharing, but on the flip side, it is also one of those, it is work at the end of the day. So, and honestly, I am a believer now that we are, I deal with cutting edge technology. We're all kind of just groping our way through all of this machine learning stuff, this data analytics, this big data, virtual reality stuff. Shouldn't we all be sharing with each other to help us, move forward as culture, society, etc. is concerned? So, and just to kind of go back here, this is something that I also talk about here, where when we started looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning here at CCAC, pretty much the first thing I did was I went to Lorraine and Christine and I was like, hey, we're looking at machine learning. What do we got? So as far as OER is concerned. And the library was fantastic as far as we ordered a ton of textbooks and books in general as far as, being able to, so the students don't have to buy texts. And also this is just kind of an example here for folks as far as being able to see oh yeah, you're sharing my slides.
You are.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so.
Thank you.
After all of this about OER, and no, you can't share my slides. So that actually takes you out to Google just to show you there. They actually do have their Creative Commons license down at the very bottom. So, I mean, a lot of the big name companies, we also deal in data analytics. We deal with SAS. SAS is another big company for statistical analysis that they have very much started to offer free access to their software and also free access to their training as well. So a lot of people are starting to kind of, I think, get the memo here. So lastly here, this is kind of the, at least for me personally, this is probably the one that is nearest and dearest to my heart. And this is CIT 100 Fundamentals of Computers. Another thing that I noticed was whenever I would go into the bookstore, you'd have like 6 sections of a class and each one would have a different textbook. So one of my big things was, especially with CIT 100, this is literally how to use a computer. Light introduction to Microsoft Office. And where we're having students, pretty much I think the textbook and the access code came to like $250 for one student, which I was just like, no. So I have been working with Christine, Lorraine, and Ross as far as we built out as far as looking at all of the learning objectives for the class, pulling content that was matched to each objective for the class. And then right now, I'm still working with Ross, but we are going to start loading this into Blackboard, whereby if you are an adjunct, if you are a full-time faculty member and you want to use this, it just gets assigned to you, boom, you're ready to go. The assignments are there. Now, the only drawback is again, coming back to the auto grading. That's always the big thing that I get hammered on as a department head is, okay, what about, will it grade for me? No, you are going to have to grade the assignments. And you can it's kind of hard to see here when we share, you'll be able to see as far as what we did with these learning objectives. Let's use this. There are lots of learning objectives in CIT 100. I think there was like 18 or 19. It's a pretty big task to take on here, but it was really awesome because we had the content sources. So Ross designed the overall layout here. We pulled out the objectives and stuff. I told Ross, Larry, and Christine what I wanted. Christine and Lorraine would go out. They just started populating everything for me, and then I just had to go in and click on the links, which honestly I think I got out pretty easy personally. And I just had to review everything. And then you can see we have kind of a comment section over on the side there where we were able to just, I'd say, I like it, but is there something more based on this? Or, oh, I don't like this. We need to find something different for this. And that was probably the most difficult part for me, was like the delegation of, I felt so bad because they'd go out and find all this information for me, and I'd be like, I don't like it. I'm sorry. Can we find something else? So, but honestly, we're pretty much at a point now. We're really hoping that to make this live in the fall of 19 here, and I mean, the goal is like all of CCAC, all campuses, all branches are going to be using this. Because at least to me personally, having students, hey, welcome to college, buy this $250 textbook is not a message that I personally want to be sending to my students. And then real quick, lastly here, this summer I've been playing around with Opencourseware. I am using their missing link, an introduction to web development and programming. So far my students are absolutely loving the textbook. They love the fact that they don't have to buy a textbook. I've also done a lot of Panopto videos as far as this goes. The one thing that we did, Lorraine and I kind of worked on that, was figuring out where Panopto fell in the OER as far as me making a recording and how do we share that because we pay to have Panopto. So that's been kind of ongoing. From what I remember, we can share them.
You can share it, you just can't remix it because it's Panopto. But yeah, it's more because of the platform. You have to have that platform. So, but yes, it can be shared, and if you have Panopto, you can do whatever with it. But it's the proprietary, makes it harder to remix it all.
Yeah,
but you can share it.
I mean, looking back on it, I probably should have maybe done like YouTube videos or something. I could have. I wanted to test drive Panopto from its layout, and then also too, I've actually been playing around with, in this one, gamifying the curriculum. I wanted to add a sense of gamification. It's actually been interesting to watch because I do get emails asking, how do I achieve this award? So it's kind of interesting, and I'm just like, oh, just keep working through the class, you'll find it. So a future on this class, though, actually tying into what Coral was talking about with GitHub, there is a Get book as well as far as the platform is concerned that I'm hoping that when I get some time, we'll actually be able to tie that into GetBook and kind of move it over from the Blackboard system. And then truly, it will be open education resource to everybody. Do I have any questions? I don't know when lunch is coming. Question.
I love you, and everything that you said. And can you come to my campus and teach my faculty to be like that?
Are you from IUP?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm from St. Francis University.
I actually taught at St. Francis. So.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did pick up, when I was an adjunct, I picked up a class there. I said IUP because I'm getting my doctorate at IUP,
okay.
and I did my undergraduate at Duquesne. So.
Good job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Susan, maybe you could just take your show on the road and
Yeah.
present to the All College Conference, CCAC All College Conference. If not this fall, because not enough time to go in the program, but maybe for spring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really think get our stakeholders on board.
Oh, yeah.
From the early adopters, big covers and laggards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely, I will say, you know, I feel like I've dealt with a kind of split between the innovation, but also the bottom liners, just pulling from the other presentation. You know, you start to show them numbers that I save students 30 to 50K,
That's good.
then heads start to turn type of thing. So.
May I just ask one thing?
Yeah.
Do you think this is more easily adoptable if you're already a computer person and teaching computer classes? I mean, how well do you think it, I mean, maybe not just a textbook, but all of the things that you presented and all the whistles, do you think they would work just as well in, let's say, psychology, sociology? This was.
I really do think so. I also think it comes down to the person. I mean, that's why I like using, I mean, I really commit to that phrase of it's an OER lifestyle. That, I mean, I'm always poking, prodding, looking at the latest and greatest. I mean, I went through maybe 4 of the different publishing platforms with Lorraine for my textbook before I settled on Pressbook as far as that goes. But I'm not, you know, it's definitely a mindset. Like, I'm not afraid to dive in and just get my hands dirty. And if I break it, I break it. You know, so.
I was going to say it might be a generational thing, but it's not so much then so much as whether humanities type as opposed to natively gifted with computers, for example. That's interesting. So do you see any kind of barrier there?
I think there could be a barrier depending on the folks. I think the way to address that barrier is, you know, having folks, you know, the early adopters, I guess like myself, where we could come in and actually show, you know, doing presentations on not so much what is OER, but okay, today we're going to set up a shell for how to make an OER, you know, textbook or an OER class or an OER lecture. You know, it doesn't have to be done, it could be done in your campus's LMS. You know, I mean, I guess going back to that, you know, intuitive, I mean, I've worked in Moodle, Blackboard, and D2L, Desire to Learn. You know, you kind of know, for me, my mindset's always been I kind of know one, you know, I can fumble my way through the others type of thing. But being able to even go to other schools and say, yep, I'm an early adopter OER, this is what I've done, this is how I do it, you know. I mean, my only concern would be, I guess I would be concerned, you know, to me, I think it's the coolest stuff since sliced bread, you know, but somebody might look at that and be like, well, I don't want to spend my Saturday night doing that. So.
We're trying to overcome the learning curve.
So you said you had looked at 3 or 4 publishing platforms. Which ones did you look at?
I looked at the LibreText. I actually did look at the Get Books. I thought maybe that might fit. From an ethics standpoint, I didn't have enough coding or anything to go into that. I actually looked at Wikibooks as well. And then lastly, yeah, I did look at the Pressbook. I actually like the Pressbook the most because it actually reminded me a lot of WordPress. I do a lot of work in WordPress. I actually teach a class on it, so I chose to go with that one.
Pressbooks is built on WordPress.
Yeah. Did I have any other questions? All right. And this should be on the desktop there.
June.
Awesome. What's that?
On the,
We need to do something different.
no, you have to go back to Zoom and hit share so that their slide is being shared.
Okay, and we should hopefully have lunch here soon, but we're gonna do at least one more presentation before, and to be Sue Gill, she's from Westmoreland County Community College, and she works as an advisor and an adjunct instructor, so she's gonna talk about both working with students, especially in a community college setting, whenever they're selecting classes and what the textbook cost means to them. There, and also as an adjunct instructor who's used an OpenStax textbook in her courses. So she's an advisor at WCCC in New Kensington. She also teaches social science and humanities courses as an adjunct instructor and as a member of the Active Learning Committee. Her background in social work and current role at the community college has fueled her interest in improving students' access to the resources they need to succeed in their educational endeavors. Along with the responsibilities at the college, Sue also works in career development for recent graduates of a general equivalency diploma program. And the focus of her doctoral dissertation was gender and leadership, and she enjoys conducting seminars and workshops. So, thank you. And I'm gonna sit down, and there's a mouse here.
You can click it back on to the speaker. I'll put the speaker up over here. Oh.
I need what they used to do. I was in child welfare for about 20 years, and while I was working on my doctorate, one of my cohort mates in IUP, someone who suggested that I work for the community college as an adjunct instructor, and I did that, and I didn't realize it'd be life-changing because I loved teaching, brought something out of me that social work never had. So I've been doing that since 2010, loving every minute. Scarfing up any class I could get, begging, borrowing, stealing, anything I could do. And about a year ago, I was offered a position at the New Kensington Center where I had taught sometimes and as an advisor. And it gave me a great window to how students are thinking and feeling about their education that was a little different than what I was getting as an instructor. I think both views are valuable, and that's what I'm hoping to share with you a little bit today. I teach social science, as you asked, is it possible to go do OERs in social science, and I do social science classes. And I think it's very applicable. At WCCC, we started using OpenStax textbooks, for instance, for our sociology classes. I think that's my favorite class to teach. I teach principles of sociology sometimes. And I thought I would kind of give you a little window into what I'm going through as an instructor as well as an advisor, if you could humor me for a minute here. Have any of you ever gone out of the United States? Funny, it seems like the people in the academic world like to travel and get to see how the rest of the world functions, right? Just shout out, where have you been? Where? Dominican Republic? Oh, I hope it wasn't recently.
No.
I'm glad you came back. I'm glad you made it back okay. What's the most exotic place anyone's been? Turkey? That's pretty exotic. Yeah. China? Where? India. India? Okay. Yeah, I mean, you've been to some pretty exotic places, right? A little bit different from the United States, I'm thinking sometimes. So off the top of your head, name a couple differences between here and India. In terms of what? Anything. Food.
It's obvious as this. I mean, wrap your head around it. The business level people will make very thoughtfully. Know that.
Absolutely.
We never be able to deal with that.
Well, we talk about India a little bit in our social stratification session, because the idea is you never really break out of that caste, right? And we're in the United States, we're growing up with the idea that, you know, sometimes it's possible. You don't die in the same social situation that you were born into a lot of times. I think that's a little different. The clothes are a little different. I see some of the Indian women, I'm like, oh, I like that. Food.
It's a country, so
Yeah. It's hard to relate to that. But
cities and stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody food, the city's elephants.
I have a feeling that you were happy to get on the plane to come home, but you wouldn't trade the experience for the world. Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. When I teach, we do several sessions of culture when I'm teaching sociology classes. One of my favorite things to explore with the students. I always ask the students, where have you been? What can you bring back? My colleague Adam came here from Arizona. And while I was talking to, I was like, why would you do that? Like, have you noticed our weather since you got here? Has it made an impression on you?
I'm actually from Indiana. Yeah.
Okay. So we talk about culture shock, and maybe it wasn't as much culture shock to you as it would be if you were born and raised in Arizona and came here.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I've talked to a few people that had been born and raised somewhere warm, and they came here and they're like, oh, what's that? Well, you just didn't know what you were in for because you'd never been through it, right? But one thing I teach my students about culture is that it's not just different places. It's also about time. You can have a different culture in the same place across time, right? Like one thing I get them to think about, I hope this works. Okay. This is one thing I ask my students. I'm a baby boomer. I don't know how many baby boomers are in here. I guess I'm teaching Generation Z for the most part now, which is like Generation X, then millennials, which the baby boomers raised, and now we're teaching Generation Z. That's my understanding. But I ask my students some of these. I think some of you will be able to get these. What is that? Has anybody ever played one? There were a few disadvantages to it, right? Yeah. Like, does anybody have any left over from the bygone era?
You don't want to scratch it.
You don't want to scratch it. But the wonderful thing about it is it plays on both sides, right? Exactly. What about, anybody of you have one of these players in your car? If so, you're probably like me and you need a new car. What was the disadvantage of this? Like the record's scratched.
Need a pencil.
You need a pencil. Millennial, right? With vague memories on it, but you didn't grow up with the record albums, but you do cassette tapes, or you need a pencil to rewind it. Also, what if there's a particular song you want that's in the middle? You got to fast forward, rewind it. Yeah. Then maybe you'll get somewhere around the beginning of it, either at the end of the last song or the beginning of the next song. What is that thing?
Save icon.
Exactly. Thank you for identifying that.
What is that thing? I always stop my millennials and Generation Zers with that. Who knows what it is? 8 tracks, right? I tell them, you might not have heard as much about that because I think we only used them for about 20 minutes at the time they came out. But yeah, it's an 8-track. And that had all kinds of disadvantages of the Okay, how many of you, I asked them, are considering these occupations? What is that? I love an operator. How many of your students are like, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to grow up and be an operator. How about this one? Was his name Mike? I think all their names were Mike. My milkman was named Mike. And I remember being a little kid, he would come to the house and he'd make a fuss over us kids, and I didn't realize that he was primarily doing it because that's good for business, right? If you want to keep in business with his house, you make a fuss over the kids, and then the kids are like, where's money? Which is what we were doing. But when I talked to Melody about this seminar, Melody reminded me, she thinks the milkman's coming back, only with a far more expanded repertoire.
It was on right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I like the milkman. That's fine. How about this? What was the purpose of that little toll booth in the middle of parking lots everywhere? I didn't even remember what those were for. What's that? Exactly. Exactly. You see, there was a time when you used to take something out of your camera, take it to a store, drop it off, come back days later, and maybe they would have it for you. Are these occupations changing or going away? All right, how many say changing? How many say going away? If we're not going to have anybody doing travel. So if my husband and I are going to hop on a motorcycle and go away for a few days, of course we would need a few nice days in a row to do that, so we don't do it often. But we would call a travel agent, right? We wouldn't go to AAA and get our trip takes. But what specializations call for that? Yeah, that's right. You want someone that specializes at that time, right? Someone who really knows the ropes as far as traveling to places where I'm used to going. Did you do that when you went to India? Did you use a travel agent? Yeah. What about some of these other exotic places you've been to? How many of you use travel agents when you're leaving the country and going to places you're not going? Turkey? Must go to Turkey? No, it was okay. But someone on campus did it though, right? Yeah. How about this job? Are we going to have yellow cab taxi drivers very much longer? What's that? Uber, Lyft, right? What happens to the yellow cabs then? Will we still have yellow cabs 10 years from now, do you think? They catch up. Yeah, when they come into this world. Okay, how about this one? Let's see, I had a video embedded in here, but I think I won't be able to make that work. It's related to this profession. Anybody recognize that? Is that a profession that's going away or is it changing?
Changing.
How many of you are librarians that are emphatically saying it's changing? Don't make it go away. It's great. I spent my whole life in my profession building, growing, and expanding my wealth of knowledge. The video that I'm not going to show you. Anybody else love It's a Wonderful Life? It's a movie that's my all-time favorite movie. Anybody else? Who loves it? Who watches it because somebody else loves it, you're forced to. Okay, you'll recognize this scene. It's when George Bailey is with Clarence the Angel, and he says, "Where's Mary?" Do you remember all of it?
That's my friend's name.
Okay, where's Mary? You're not going to like it, George, he says, because Clarence can see things George can't. You're not going to, Clarence can see the future that didn't happen but would have been. You're not going to like it, George. Where is she? Grabs him by the collar. Where is he? She never married, George. Where is she? She's closing up the library. So I'm just here to tell you, librarians, he didn't mean the worst thing that could ever happen in the world when Mary became a librarian. But this is part of the culture across times, right? The worst thing that happened to Mary was the part where he says she never married. Because that means she never had a man to take care of her. So is that a reflection of the culture across time that changed? I think we can kind of think that way. So here's something else I found. I found in the article on MoneyWise, maybe some of you saw it, that said these everyday products may soon vanish. Do you agree with this? So let's talk about some of these products. Will desktop computers go away? Will they be replaced by our laptops and our tablets or smartphones? So you think there'll always be a purpose out there for them, although they'll
Might have changed somewhat. For one goes small.
people know both, right? Like how many of you have students who do their papers on their phone?
I know.
Yeah, it seems like that'd be rough. It does, but they do it. How about those? Are they going to go away? Like 10 years from now, we fast forward 10 years from now, will anybody be carrying around keys on a chain?
I will be. They're still.
You will be? Yeah, the keys are cheap. That's always a wonderful asset, right? So some of you think, you know, maybe the usage will decrease, but they might not necessarily go away completely. How about this? Why did they go away?
I like the voice.
Hey Alexa, turn on the weather channel. No, never mind. I don't want to know the weather anymore. What's that? Exactly. Yeah. So are they going away? The fight over the remote. What do you think? Going away? Or just changing? We'll be talking to the TV, right? Right? How many of you have vague memories of having to get up, go across the room, and change the channel? I'm a boomer, so yeah, I remember it pretty well. And the antennas? Car insurance. Now, according to this article, we won't need car insurance anymore. Why? Because we're going to have all self-driven cars, robots driving our cars, and there won't be any more accidents.
I hate self-driving. No, we have insurance for everything.
Yeah, we'll just.
So the people that sell car insurance, the people that sell car insurance will still make a case for it, I'm sure. What do you think? Changing or going away? Will we still have? I'm sorry, I don't trust robotic cars as much as you do. I don't have a hard time believing there will be no more accidents. I have a hard time believing that. I can cause an accident whether I'm driving a car or not.
Just walk down the road.
It's a gift. That's true. Did the self-driving car run over someone?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were going to go down in shorts then. This is the one that I thought was the most impactful. College textbook. Danger? You think that there will go away?
They just be the physical book. What are they?
Do you think we'll always have textbooks in some form? But
Electronic version, probably, but.
what's that?
Format.
How many of you have students that say, I still want a hard copy? Like our sociology department uses OpenStax. You go to the OpenStax website and click on enough drop downs, you'll finally get to our textbook, sociology. It says 2E. Click on that and that pops. You can click on each of the chapters. But I still have students say, well, I went to the computer lab, but I'm printing them out a chapter at a time because I want my hard copy. How many of you have to tell students, oh, I know you can get last year's edition at a fraction of the price, but I want you to buy this edition, which is well over $100. Now you can go to Amazon and buy last edition for $10 or $15 because it's not the latest edition anymore, but the new one is 100 and some. I taught a critical thinking class last fall, and I asked the students, how much did all of you pay for your textbooks? And most of them said over $200. What? But one in the class, she didn't make herself a friend with the classmate very fast after she said this, but she said she spent $25 on Amazon. I encourage the students when I'm an advisor, shop around. You might be able to get a better mind on it. So what are students concerned about when they're meeting? You know, I get to get inside their head a little bit as an advisor. Like, what are your concerns? What are you thinking about? I meet with a lot of freshmen. Working in a community college, all we have are freshmen and sophomore. And when I meet with the new students, usually they're a bundle of nerves anyhow. A lot of them want to have the degree, want to have the education, but are not so sure they can. Those of you at the CCAC, you have students like that too. Like, what am I thinking? Even signing up for classes. Once upon a time, I was a brand new student at CCAC Voice. I was a mother of 3 and had a job. And I was wondering, what made me think I could do this? Well, I meet with a lot of students in that frame of mind. And part of it is the cost, of course. We talked a lot about that. How many of our students are facing bills that they're wondering, they're going to be my age before it's paid off? That's what they're thinking when they're meeting. They're going to spend more on their education than they are on their house by the time they get back. So yeah, cost is a huge factor. When I tell them this class or that class has an OER textbook, you don't have to pay for it, you can read it online. Usually that's a selling point. A lot of times the students are asking me to pull up the bookstore website to find out how much the book costs, and that's a deciding factor on whether they're going to take that class or not. I mentioned a few minutes ago, now we're enrolling Generation Z. I understand they're a little bit different from the millennials. Their concerns are a little bit different. Part of it is they've watched the millennials get into massive debt to obtain their education, and they don't want that for themselves. I have a lot of students talk to me about, can I just take X number of courses at a time so that I can work a lot of hours and be paying on my education as I'm going through it? And a lot of that is because of the role models in the generation ahead of them. Wrapping up on speaking with that. They also ask, will it be a good career move for me? Will it get me somewhere? It's more than the value of the education. They want to know they're going to make money off of it. Have you had students talking to you about that? I want to make money. I'm not here just to get an education. The education almost seems secondary. I want to make money. Will this do that for me? Will I be able to get a job from this? And I show them resources. Do research your field. Find out what the opportunities are. Are you willing to move? Are there opportunities here? If you can get this degree, look into it, do your homework. Start. I see a lot of students that are more prone to want to go for solid careers like, well, it's like my mom tells me there will always be a need in healthcare. So they're coming there looking for healthcare fields. So always be a need for engineers. There will always be a need for food. If I go into this field, people always want to eat. People always want their computers, they always want their technology. I'm hearing a lot of that from the students. They want to know that what they're getting into is very practical. What kind of income will I get from it? Will I learn anything useful? I don't want touchy-feely classes. I want to know that what I'm learning in each class, I'll be able to take it into the real world and use it in some way. I'm hearing all those concerns from the students. They want to have those guarantees up front. How many of you are teachers? Are the teachers of, the students of today content with sitting in a class, watching a PowerPoint, and that being the entire hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes, taking notes? Are they as content with that idea? Or do instructors have a need to be more creative in how they present their topics? Do they have a need to pull the students in while they're teaching them so that the students are part of the class? We talk about this a lot. Melody mentioned I'm on an active learning committee. How can the students become a part of the process? How can they know that it's more than this expert in front of me dispensing knowledge? How can they know they're a part of the learning process? How can they know it's more than just having words and phrases thrown at them while they studiously take notes and get tested on it later? Students today, I'm reading about this and I'm seeing it for myself, and I'm wondering if some of you also are. They want to be a part of the class and they want to be a part of the learning. I know a lot of times when I'm teaching, social sciences, this is easy. A topic comes up that they haven't talked about before, then they're the first to pull out their phones if a topic comes up that we haven't really touched on. I say all that to say this. I think active learning, which is what students are demanding now, is an important part of the OER process. I think they work hand in hand. Can you have active learning without OER? Can you have students passively taking in all the information that needs to be part of 3 or 4 years without using open educational resources and be as effective as you can be? I feel like the active learning and the open educational resources both need to coexist. And I think a lot about this. I'm passionate about what I want to get across to my students. I want to, I'm sure those of you who teach do this too. You think of how much money did they spend for the privilege to sit here and learn from you? And you want them to get the most they can from them. And that's always in the back of my mind, and I'm sure for most instructors that's the case. And I think the combination of the active learning and the open educational resources will partner up to bring a profound difference in the way students are educated now, and hopefully we'll see that reflected when they actually enter the workforce. So, maybe what I came to impart to you today. Thank you for playing along with me in my slideshow. That I just think all of us gave us something to think about today. I really appreciate it.
They're probably going to be a little bit like they're on their way, but the problem is our students, which is about 250 of the young students that we have heard earlier, their parents are picking them up now. Which means there's a huge line, and they're probably going to be in it. So I apologize for that, but Melody still has her presentation to give, and as soon as they get here, we'll get it going. But Things just did not work out the way they were supposed to, and I do apologize for that.
I think there's still like a little fruit and maybe like a cookie left, if you guys want to split it up. And I'll just keep this short to whatever time. Hopefully the lunch will be here. And going back to the strategic plan, so is it here? Is that it? Okay. While they're setting that up, I'm just going to go really quickly. All I wanted to do was talk about my first year at Duquesne. I started there in May of last year and tried to hit the ground running with our OER initiative. And so I just wanted to share to kind of launch a conversation so we can talk about what everyone's doing to try to help each other move to the next level. And I'm only going to go as long as it takes to set the food, if I can get this started. Okay. So it's about our first year. And this is just to give you an idea of what one campus looks like with the initiative and where it's starting out. Before I came to Duquesne, the university librarian actually started the initiative, and she set up a temporary OER task force and just gathered people from the campus. So that included the provost was involved to a level, but I don't think he was on the task force, but different administrators from across campus, kind of like what we talked about with Jeremy Anderson and getting different key people, and included like the bookstore manager, Center for Teaching Excellence, things like that. Their main objective was to get a survey out. And they surveyed one survey for faculty and one for students to get an idea of what their knowledge was about OER and what they could do, like if there's different things that would encourage them to actually adopt or use OERs, or for students, like what's important for them with textbooks, and do they want things in print, are they okay with digital, different questions like that. And I brought a few copies of our survey report, which came out of that. So if anybody is interested in conducting a survey on your campus, I can just show you what we did so that you can have an idea of what's being done. So let me know. I have a couple of hard copies, and I can also make it available later too. And then the task force closed with recommendations to the provost, where they said these are the next steps. And the biggest things, the number one thing that faculty that they said would convince them to adopt an OER is to hear from other faculty that they're doing it or that they recommend it. And so I think that needs to be an important component of our strategies when we're talking with folks, is just saying, here's OERs, and if you have those early adopters who are excited about it, trying to get them to share that excitement with their peers, because that's going to probably be the most influential way of getting peers involved. And so I wanted to just talk real quickly about the different people that I worked with this first year. It was my first year at Duquesne, so I was getting to know campus myself, and also trying to connect with different groups. So the first outreach I did was with the new faculty, which was easy because I was a new faculty member, and I could just speak to, at the new faculty orientation, I mentioned it, and that's where I actually built probably the most connections for the whole year. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that new faculty are starting to teach new classes, and they're like, oh, I'll consider an open textbook for that. And so that was a really important source of outreach for me, and I'm planning to do that again in August this year when we have our orientation. I also met with the bookstore manager. Duquesne has their bookstores run through Barnes & Noble, so there would naturally be like some level of like, how's this relationship going to go? But our bookstore manager is incredibly interested in textbook affordability, so he's really easy to work with. And he was also part of the OER task force, so he's familiar with OERs. So I just encourage you to try to develop a positive relationship with your bookstore. I found just from talking to different people that oftentimes they're actually more than willing to help out and promote OER initiatives, even if you feel like there's like a tension and interest there. I held a couple sessions for librarian training so that the librarians at our library will be familiar with OERs and also familiar with what they can do. So I did a training session on the need for OERs, what defines an OER, and kind of like how you can start looking for them. And then I did another training on open pedagogy, which I'm a big fan of, and that ties into the active learning component and using the permissions of OER to integrate into your pedagogy. So That way, the librarians, whenever they talk with their faculty, they are knowledgeable and have like a baseline of information about OERs and can have that conversation. The other thing I do is whenever I meet one-on-one with faculty members, since I'm like the OER person at campus, all of the OER requests are directed to me. But if I'm meeting with a chemistry professor to review textbooks in this area, I'll bring our subject expert from the sciences with me. And it's been a great opportunity because she's also new to the university. It's helped her meet faculty in her area, but also it makes our conversation more fruitful whenever I have somebody who's like more familiar with the subject content than I am. And then I can also be familiar with the different resources for searching for OERs. I held multiple micro sessions for faculty. These were half-an-hour sessions over lunch. We provided lunch through the library, so it was quick, but it gave them just that general introduction. And a lot of the faculty who contacted me throughout the year had attended the micro sessions, or later on I'll talk about the full faculty workshop. Actually, I'm going to talk about that now. But, I did like a full faculty workshop, which is through the style of the Open Textbook Network. If anybody attended Affordable Learning PA's training session in September, we had the Open Textbook Network, the two people who founded it come to Carlisle, PA, and do a presentation on how they give this workshop. And it's just kind of like a structured workshop that they've developed and that they share the slides, and you can tailor it to your university. The PALC has become a consortium member of the Open Textbook Network. So if you're interested in learning about that, it's about an hour-and-a-half workshop, and it's just kind of like pre-designed so that you can have like a framework that's been demonstrated to work at other institutions. Let me know and I can get you in touch with some resources to help support that. But I did that. The whole way that the workshop is designed is so that at the end there's a call to action where you tell the faculty, just review a textbook. All we're asking you to do is look at one, and you provide a stipend for them to review one. And the review, Open Textbook Network has a review structure that's very easy. It can be done pretty quickly. It's not, they just have like a bunch of different things that you address, and you can use like one sentence to review a textbook about its clarity, you know, how much does it cover, and then they can use that to have evaluations on their website. But that's, the idea is that it gets the faculty member to start looking at a textbook, open textbook. And statistically, they've said that 45% of the faculty who review a textbook end up adopting one. So I held one of those, and I had maybe 12 to 15 faculty attend that, and a handful that offered to do a review. So that was like a great way to start reaching that out. And I think we got one confirmed adoption out of that, but the word is getting out there. We're still in our first year. I also asked for student opinions, and I just basically put up a whiteboard in the library that was like, what do you think about the cost of textbooks? And it was actually a poster on a whiteboard, so they wrote it, and I could take the poster with me to the faculty workshop, and there were some words I had to like blot out because they weren't appropriate, but the students are angry about the cost of textbooks and not pleased. There might have been one comment of like, it's all right, but like, it's like an outlier, but everything else. So I just wanted to have a way for student voice to be contributed to our workshops and things like that. And then I also did a presentation to the SGA, the Student Government Association, and they're on board with this. They know that textbook costs are a problem on our campus. We now have a food pantry on our campus because of food insecurity. So of course, when people come down to it and they can't afford food, they certainly cannot afford a $200 textbook. And so just ongoing, I'll be working with faculty. So this is like what I did over the first year. I'm curious to hear what people have done, you know, the past year, what you have planned for the future. Looking ahead, I'm just going to continue working with the faculty. I'm looking to do things a little more methodically this year in terms of tracking the adoptions to estimate cost savings, so we can have some hard data to show to interested parties. I'm going to continue providing educational events like the micro sessions and the workshop. And I want to find a new way of helping the students have their voices made known. So I see that lunch is being set up, so at long last. Thank you all for your patience with this. And we'll probably have some closing words around 2 o'clock, but other than that, I hope that the lunchtime will be another great time to connect with people. Thank you. And I'm just saying, we do have an evaluation from today, so before you leave, I have some paper copies I'll put on the table out there, or you can just go to that website and just let us know what you thought and if you'd be interested in training sessions in the future. So thank you. Yeah, I will send that out as an email also. So if you prefer paper, I'll have some evaluations up here and I'll have some on the table out here. One thing about the lunches, if you have any allergies, we should order according to the allergy. I pick a marker that's like vegan option, celiac option, anything in particular, and we're on part of the box.
Yeah. I like that you build your slide reviews and remakes. Like that's like a brilliant idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the perfect demonstration. Like, did you do the creative commons certification?
No, I know.
I think you can do like take it for so you want a certificate to do that work. I'm in it right now, so it's good. I wish like my summers are actually very busy. Like summers and fall semesters are those busy, and spring is more chill. So like guys we do Sunday, and I'm like, how I haven't started yet. So I have like that here, but besides the class is like really well organized. Yeah. It's well organized. They have like discussions that people like seem to actually like will be into it. So it's not like my classes or my sort of discussion board. Nobody. They're like, what's the word? Yeah. I inserted it when I did this like my class of teaching else. I edited a Google Doc and I reviewed it and I started looking out. At least I've had 2 assignments with the guitar, and it's like I feel like people are actually engaging it more than the discussion board. It's not broken into the
Yeah, I like this. I know how to use it. Yeah, I agree. Work on things together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like the technology is making the conversation that exists. And I can actually embed the Google Doc into Blackboard, so they log into the folder and see the conversation.
They're kind of like, yeah, right. I'm going to write it maybe twice or something because more than I do like buy a bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna recommend that actually ordering through. So this is what happened.
Yeah.
She's back on the page. No, I think they'd already started with. She told me, and I finally called me. No, it was yesterday. That's why I'm wow. That's what they're just saying like I'm just saying and then we did like and say that they were
Well, now that they know
get